Hey guys.
Hey, you okay?
Hey.
Hey. Jared, who is supposed to be hosting this episode, I think is having a little bit of trouble logging in. So just trying to fix that on my end. But wanted to just get on here, introduce you guys. Super excited about today's conversation. So I know today, first, hello for everyone who's joining on LinkedIn or on AirMeet. We are so excited that you're here. So today we have Michael, who is co-founder of Belkins, and Nick, who is head of sales at Selligence, who are going to be sharing their insights on SaaS startups, sales development, emails, intelligence to use for prospecting. So I will kind of turn the mic and camera over to you guys. Would be awesome if you could introduce yourselves, kind of tell us a little bit more about your companies and about what you're doing.
Sure.
Thanks, Adriana. Nick, do you want to go first?
No, after you. Go.
All right. So hey everyone, Adriana and Regina, thanks for having us here. Thanks for having me. So I am one of the founders at Balkans. We are ranked the number one appointment setting agency worldwide. Worked successfully with thousands of clients over the last 6 years. Have incredible deliverability results. That's why we are, eminent in the space. And we also have several products that we're cooking and growing internally. One of them is this amazing deliverability platform called Folderly. Me being head of sales, head of marketing, head of growth, head of people, head of everything, and just building things from the ground up. And now pushing SaaS and working with sales and marketing closely to for anything related to go to market. Would be happy to to discuss with Nick and with you guys about what we're doing, what we think to be doing, and what I've learned over my last 10 years of sort of like building and growing the startup. So glad to be here.
Awesome. Sorry, go ahead, Nick.
No, I was going to say, yeah, so just introductions as well. So, great to be here. But yeah, so head of sales at Selligence. And, quite frankly, in terms of what we're doing is really aggregating a lot of different data points. So anything from your likes of your contact information, but more importantly, right down to actually creating the business development leads that the likes of SDRs or kind of 360 AEs will need in their day to day. So it's really streamlining the research that they're going to need day to day and essentially just centralizing it for them. So in terms of them, where they're saving all their time from all the painstaking research and admin that it's traditionally takes, as well as tracking multiple sources, we're just pulling that into one platform for them. So yeah, hell of a journey, growing fast as a business. I say that's right across the UK and the US, so certainly exciting times, but again, great to be here.
Awesome. Well, welcome both of you. Definitely want to start out with a question that we like to ask pretty much everyone, which is debunk a myth. So I'd love for you guys to kind of debunk a myth, like a common misconception about sales development for startups, or like, anything that you feel people normally think about getting their like first sales motion going.
Sorry, Michael.
I would love to hear from both of you.
One of those, obviously. I think that I can kind of start off is one of the myth is that, if you know your customers and if you kind of analyze your customer base and then you kind of project the same titles to, for your outbound campaigns, you would think that, well, for sure, those are the same titles. So if I run campaign, I would be successful. But that's not actually the case. So whenever you start actually doing an outbound and you will analyze, then maybe the titles that you would approach with your outbound would be totally different from those that you already work among your clients. So the myth is that you definitely need to run a lot of A/B testing, a lot of segmentation, and just generally, just being open to changing your approach and not just relying on, hey, well, these are the customers that I work with, then why I'm not selling to them as well. So that's one of the myths.
I think it's a very
Welcome,
good one,
Jared.
By
the way.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for your patience with me.
No worries.
We're debunking myths, so we're going to hear from Nick next, and I will give the floor to you, Jared.
Awesome. Thanks, Adriana.
Probably I'd say probably one very, very topical at the moment. You see it everywhere. See it on LinkedIn, and that's people talking around new like sales enablement tools and talking around like cold calling is dead. I'm like absolutely no chance. I think literally when we look at it, 95% of our business last year was done from a cold call. I think it's the one part that often people are really putting kind of behind the scenes and looking at every other different angle that they can reach out and different methods. There's a lot of things you can do to support them, but being there on the phone at the cold front, really, that's where relationships are built. And I say certainly from our side, it's majority of where the business has come from.
And I agree with you there, Nick. Sorry, Jared, for bumping in here. It's like cold calling is a very sensitive topic for me because we're not in cold calling. We've never done that, and we failed miserably. But I agree with you that cold calling works. Although all of the folks that I know and me personally used to automate, outsource, have decentralized people, teams, etc. And when I'm trying to do that, it's not actually coexisting with the cold calling. I feel like when you need to be very local, you need to have folks on the ground, you need to have someone speaking the same language, the same terminology, knowing the products, ins and outs, and then you can be successful. But if you're trying to sort of like just do the top of the funnel with some remote based team everywhere and just do cold calling internationally, I'm not sure that's going to be a kind of a good approach. But maybe I'm not correct there. So
yeah, breaking this out a little bit, do you think it's like Outbound should be a centralized team or it should be distributed? Because it sounds like if it's distributed, you might not have as much from your tool chest. Michael?
yeah, so just to add on this and to elaborate, of course. So I think that you should look at this channel wise or approach wise, right? So if, for instance, I am looking for, let's say, like ABM approach, or I'm doing just appointment setting globally, I have clients worldwide. So it's probably better for me to hire remotely, get a set of tools to automate my work, and also leverage more digital channels that require less one-to-one talk and more sort of like personalization with regards to maybe content, social, email, messages, whatever, right? But if I am trying to be only one channel, for example, I really wanted to focus and be successful in the cold calling. And as Nick is like, hey, I'm UK based, I wanted to win the local market, that would probably gonna go with some cold callers really hitting the phone and just targeting locally. And I think that I would have some success in that approach as well. So it depending on the approach, I think. And
I mean, Outbound in general, like how is Outbound different today than it was? Geez, I could say 2 years ago, certainly 10 years ago.
I
How is
think
it?
I
Yeah,
think you can probably see this shift even in the last 6 months, personally, and I think that's a focus from where we were. We've used sequencing tools, we've used all sorts, obviously to help that sales enablement. But I say even within the last 6 months, you really start to see that shift. And actually, recently we found huge successes, back on the likes of LinkedIn, and actually, getting in the mix of that, a lot of like personal branding, personal selling, that's taken a big forefront as well in terms of what we're doing. I think whenever you're selling, whatever your approach, there's not one size fits all. Like, you'd be mad to put all your eggs in one basket, but there certainly is an absolute seismic shift in terms of that. I think we've all seen it in terms of the big, you've got to, it's all down the personalization route when you're reaching out with email, and how personal can you get, and
yeah.
there obviously needs to be a focus on that. But I say even the shift in that one small factor within the last couple of months, it's been huge, and I think probably everybody's experienced that.
What about you, Michael?
My take is that we are going circles. So it's also kind of, we started off back in like, I don't know, 90s or 2000 with like personal brand and people relying on the personal feedback. And then we went into the scalability where you have higher teams and do more calls. And then we went into automation, and then automation is too much. So we're going back to, the one-to-one, and then going back to the personal. So it's sort of like just going circles. So we just need to know the trend and just leveraging what was already yesterday is like it's probably going to be tomorrow, right? So but obviously the omni channel and doing everything as is of course the right way to go. So if you're missing on something, then probably your competitors are doing that, so you're missing traffic there. So we're doing everything.
You know what's interesting, with the advent of so much sales engagement platforms and sales technology tools, it's made doing a lot easier. A lot of good, a lot of bad. It's made doing a lot easier. And I think in the beginning of that period, that was a good thing, right? Because you were coming off of doing manual emails and looking up and say, hey, Nick, more than just where you worked, what your title was, but like looking something of that. And now you had a way to scale that. Well, we're half a dozen years into that now, right? So like people, so that person doesn't exist anymore, right? Like the salesperson pre-sales engagement, and then the one with it in their hands. This person now has grown up in sales engagement platforms. They've grown up in this. So it's a whole different, and I just put that together as I was thinking about it. That's why, and you team that with hundreds of companies getting funding, going after the same ICP, and young sellers and all of that, and you get a lot of spam, to be honest. And then now we have Google saying you can't even. So we got smart, right? What do we do? We got smart. We said we need to mail warm. We need to look at DMARC. We need to look at all of this stuff, deliverability. And Google said you can't warm anymore, like last week, right, or 2 weeks ago or something. It's a crazy.
Well, you can. Well, we still can. So it's not like you cannot warm, but you still can do something about deliverability, right? So you can do some other things. So we always adapt as the civilization, as the market. We will adapt, and we will learn how to to do our job with whatever restrictions we're put in. Like LinkedIn, like, hey, you cannot send more than 40 requests a week. Well, we're gonna adapt and do something else, right? We're gonna send them whatever manually. We can use some other tools. We can use more content. So we will adapt for sure.
How are you hack? Let's get into like the juicy stuff. Like, how are you getting past those 40, or I didn't even realize it was only down to 40. I thought it was like 100 a week for LinkedIn requests. And how are you working with deliverability?
The LinkedIn, quite honestly, that's something we really strategize around internally within the team in terms of actually who we do, and actually trying to work in blocks amongst the team. So we're maximizing those connections across the different businesses. There's a lot of things and obviously restrictions to it in terms of your response rates on LinkedIn. What's that like? How are you getting that back in terms of emails and things you can send as well? There's a lot of other metrics that go behind it, but I think it's it's the same with anything really. I think it's working smart, and actually where are you going to get the biggest bang for your buck? So in terms of the team, they're within their certain verticals from my side in terms of different ICPs that they're focusing on, and it's about actually utilizing different connection requests amongst the team to maximize what we can get out of it. And I think Michael, back to your point earlier in terms of that transition of what we're seeing, like the evolution of that reach out. I think it was like mid last year you saw like Salesforce announcing a partnership with Meta. What's coming next, and that's your WhatsApp inbox getting absolutely flooded with sales outreach. There's bound to be the next flow with that, and I'm sure it's going to go way beyond that as well.
Yeah, I think so. Oh, go on, Michael. You want to add?
No, so there were two questions, one about LinkedIn and one about the deliverability, right? And like how you still can do that. So I think that what happened on the market where there were a bunch of tools, especially in the engagement space, that released their warm-up feature as the part of their main core platform to help users to warm up. And they did that with direct OAuth from Google and some other things, because they already had a bunch of those integrations in place. But then what Google did, they were like, well, but that's not actually it. So you cannot do the warm up with all of this integration. So either you gave up on all integrations or you do the warm up. And because it's not the main business for those folks, because the warm up is just a feature, they dropped all the warm up because they don't want to lose the direct OAuth and some other integration with Google to be able to directly sync with your inbox, right? We at Folderly, the observability and the platform is the main business. So it means that we don't have the outreach. So it means that we don't need to drop anything. So when we started working with Google and other platforms, we had a different type of integrations. We have a different type of relationships and different type of a more technical level platform that is around DNS, blacklist, inbox placement, template analytics, etc., etc. So when Google released that no go for the warm up, well, for us it was still fine because we don't have a warm up as other companies have the simple one. We have a more advanced like 2077 sort of like type thing. So that's fine. But so you still can do it. It's not as simple as all of those folks had in their core platform, because they thought that, well, we're just going to write one code, connect a bunch of inboxes, get the emails floating back and forth between them, and that's it. Well, that's not how the true warm-up works, right? So, and I'm happy. And actually, I've been to one of the webinars that you guys did talking about this. So you probably can go to Regina's, the YouTube, and I spoke about that. But yeah, I can get in detail for hours talking about this. So I don't want to take this place here.
No, yeah, such a critical component. Like, do you think, sales engagement platforms are even necessary now, or are they still? Is it like is that a crazy question?
There's always going to be a blend. I think that that's always important. There's not like you can't cut one thing out and just wholly rely on something else. Do I think the reliability on those is dropping? Definitely. Like it's certainly speaking for us as well. I said I don't think they're ever going to something you're going to see that you just park ways with and they're never going to make a way back into your tech stack or do anything. They still have to remain. But yeah, I think even looking at ourselves in terms of like the response rates and things like that, they have dropped dramatically, and it's not as much as it is still focused, and we want to keep that going. I say we found better methods of outreach where we're having way better success, and it probably goes back to your point earlier, Michael. It's like you're constantly adapting in this market, and it is going round and round in that circle. And again, along with the trends, how are new things happening? How do you then stand out from the crowd compared to what everybody else is doing in the market? I think that's the real transition we're seeing at the moment. I'm sure you're both the same. You come in the morning, my inbox is absolutely flooded. Do I read many of them? No, is the honest answer. And it's, what other methods can you take to really stand out from the crowd?
Yeah, and you don't even have time to read like people that say that they want to close a deal with you. Like there's so little time.
I'm a massive advocate, and if you're doing a deal with somebody and you can't get on texting terms with them, you're probably at a losing game. Like, you need to be able to go back and forth at quick succession, get them coming back to you. That's the main way that you'll do a deal at the moment, and that's huge success what we're finding.
I like that, and even Slack Connect, right? Like, because understood that it might not get there, but like a synchronous conversation is needed. What were you going to say, Michael?
If you mentioned Slack, if someone gonna flood my Slack, I'm gonna kill that person or that company. Honestly, I think that Slack is the most secret place that I have right now, that I feel like if the people gonna Slack me, I would need to read that. Even my messages from my phone is gonna be a junk box, but not Slack. Slack is sort of like a secretal place for the meaningful conversation, I feel like, for me personally.
1,000%. So I don't think Slack should be used for outbound. I want to make that clear, like in the least. I'm just saying, like, when you're on the 1 yard line, like if you received an agreement with somebody and they set up a Slack Connect in anticipation of onboarding you, even if the agreement isn't yet signed, you could communicate back and forth faster and build that relationship. And I think that's what Nick was referring to too with text.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, so I wanted to add on a few points about.
Really.
There are so many things going on here. So obviously, when you mentioned about like cutting off some features and sort of like just, I think that what's happening, and that was my personal challenge, is that whenever you release a core feature, users in SaaS always want more additional features that are complementary for the same price point. So it means that they always want to expand but not paying more. So they require that. So we always struggle at Folderly. Can you guys add outreach? Can you add the lead research? Can you add the bounce checker, whatever? They always ask for more for the same price point. So you always are tackling between, do I want to be focused and really be an email deliverability platform, or do I want to be all-in-one engagement platform where it can have everything? And I think a lot of SaaS in MarTech and sales tech are always battling about like that decision, I feel like.
Well, I'm still waiting for Folderly in particular to become a sales engagement platform, but that's just knowing exactly what you do. Why plug in with others? Just do it yourself. And then that's your PLG like Apollo. That's a separate conversation. That's actually slightly go to market. So this is all critical, and everybody that's watching, like, and will watch, this is super important. The technicalities behind deliverability and getting there. But I happen to think one of the most overlooked things in general is like really understanding not just your ICP, but understanding like your perfect ICP. And what I mean, the difference is an ICP is something static. Like, hey, we work with companies in the USA that are this revenue, that have this many employees, that have this technology in. Your perfect ICP looks at changes in the market or changes in the world that make a subgroup of that more likely to buy right now. Would you, Nick? I know this is a bit going to like your core strength.
I think, and probably this will go a little bit to a different layer as well in terms of like that ICP. You know, if you're reaching out right from the ground up, actually, what's the profile of the person that you're trying to like reach? Like, you know, and while I'm talking around that, I'm talking like, you know, different generations of people. Is somebody going to be, you know, much more expecting a phone call? Is somebody much prefer to be communicated over WhatsApp or Slack or so forth like that? Like, I think it really comes down to that level as well in terms of that level of engagement. And again, like the deliverability in terms of, are they going to answer or even open the message? And it's kind of going a level deeper, but I think it's an important part really into like today's society and the real broadness in terms of who we're trying to reach there. It is something that is quite critical really in terms of, you know, really outlining who it is that you're targeting.
So my team obviously have been doing this outbound campaigns and ICPs for like, I think we've done over like 10,000 different ICPs and different types of campaigns for different companies. So a lot of them. And you always start with some basic, as you said, Jared, like the location, the size, the type of or titles, whatever. But what we realized is that the knowledge of the ins and outs of the industry and the title description is very important because, for example, take me into account. I am. Can you hear me all right?
Okay.
Okay. So I was saying that, let's take me into account. I am on LinkedIn, I put as a managing partner. So essentially, I can be responsible for a bunch of things in my company. And I am not receiving any cold emails. Can you imagine this? No one is trying to sell me anything. No CRM, no marketing automation, nothing. And the reason is that they don't understand my role. They don't understand what I'm responsible for in my industry. They don't have an example, right? So, and I can be a low hanging fruit for them because my partner, Vlad, who is our CEO, he receives thousands of emails with some offers, but I don't. So I can be an easy win for some folks, even though we are equally responsible for the success of our business. So the question is like, why don't you sell me, for example? And I just receive a bunch of newsletters every day that are just archived, right? There's no conversation going. So what my team is trying to achieve right now, we're trying to collect a certain knowledge base of different industries, different size of organizations, different titles, and break them down as detailed as we can, and then understand the pain points and the challenges of each title, and really address those pain points with our messaging or with our emails or phone calls, and not trying to be generalized. And I think that this is the key to it's like this is one of the way to adapt, right? Like, don't stop doing this, but right, really adapt. And when we think about, hey, personalization, it's not about creating a joke for every folk or something, right? What you can do is like really just understand who you're talking to, as Nick, right? From the gender, from the age, from whatever standpoint, and just really have the conversation that is, that is native for them in a way, right?
So this is probably like the big part as well, in something like we're seeing, and essentially kind of what our product does to a degree. But the amount of research in terms of like somebody reaching out on the cold front has probably like really dropped off. Probably of recent times. So, being able to actually understand, what's the transition that business has gone through, perhaps what's on the horizon. That's ultimately where you're going to start to pinpoint these new opportunities, especially if, and this pretty great example of conversation I had today, a business, they're looking to track organizations where they're opening new offices abroad because, they're dealing with in reg tech. There's obviously huge other implications that it needs to then bring into that space. So actually being able to like centralize that research, but understand and say, okay, well, this is the growth they experienced last year. They've hired this person into another region in Europe, and now they've announced there's a new office. Suddenly you've actually got a bit of a conversation starter with knowledge behind you to actually engage and understand exactly why it is you're approaching that person, rather than just on the cold front, pick up the phone and try and do your best as you can.
And you always, when you do this, people start always reinventing the wheel. So it's like, how do I do? Where do I start? How do that? And they just starting making mistakes instead of like really learning. And I feel like doing a bit of more research. Let me give an example. Like we've last month we released this state of the outbound report, like a 200-page report about 10 key industries with all the insights of the outbound from them, like who to message, how to message, what pain points, what are the challenges, etc. So you just take that data, implement that into your marketing or into your sales, and here you go. You have learnings from thousands of the people. But instead of reading something and keeping your eyes open for things that are happening and just getting the information, what people are trying to do, they're trying to automate, they're trying to whatever, just figure out and brainstorm and do something instead of learning. So I think that modern sales teams and marketing teams should be not just focusing on actually doing, but also always learning and not learning in a way, not just trends. Like, we have like a video message on LinkedIn, and then everyone is doing the video message, and it's like no one is opening that. But instead of just looking for the trend, try to learn from the insights of the people that have done that before, and just really have that incorporate. So I think that in my sales team, well, my co-founder does that, but we have a person or a few people that always are looking and sharing for the insights, for trends, for information. So we're cultivating sort of like from the inside the knowledge sharing to make smart decisions and not just the decision, if you know what I'm saying. So
yeah, we got a comment here, and it's funny, Michael, if you're following what's being said for the last few weeks on social media, you're probably too late.
Yep.
I'm going to just put that out there. And this goes into Arbin, who's like, with all this technology, and he got some emailing, how to stand out in inbox, quality versus quantity. So quantity only works when you're relevant at scale. Like you're reaching out to a bunch of people that all hired a head of demand gen that all probably have a similar problem. Like, hey, we noticed when folks hire a head of demand gen, it means that there's more hiring that's coming. Or when they hire a head of demand gen and they raise a round of funding, those two trigger events, there's probably more hiring. If they do that without the round of funding, there's probably something else. Sure, you could do that. But I think, Arbin, to this point, like everything we're talking about here, like understanding this stuff and then conveying that is different than the average. Like, for sure, like, people are not doing this anymore. So if you want to stand out, it's knowing who you're reaching out to and knowing why you're reaching out to them and knowing, like, double why, like I'm reaching out to you because you're this and because this is how we could help this person in this situation. Did I say that right, y'all? Like, is that roughly how to help them stand out?
I think the other side as well is think outside the box a little bit. I think we can all say if somebody's received the funding round and you've just known about it then and you're trying to reach out, you're way too late. They've got a million and one emails in their inbox. But start thinking around other things that perhaps going to lead to that. If they launch new products, is that something that your product or service can help support them with? Is it they've launched a new partnership? Is it whatever it may be? There's much broader opportunities that people can track and ultimately view to probably get in front of those people with less of a crowd, but again, probably standing out way more as well because it shows they've got a deeper sense of the research that they've done, but perhaps how that business is transitioning throughout.
And I'll just add on this real quick, Jared, that doing the pre-work is very important. So just doing the outreach right now is not enough. If you can do the pre-work, let me give an example, like just start adding people on LinkedIn, visiting some events, collecting the base, sort of like getting the conversation going, building up your audience in a way without actually going ahead and selling them for that right off the bat, and just really building up the brand and just warming things up and creating a more holistic view of your brand, right? And then trying to knock some doors instead of just just going off and just basically cold database and you just starting hitting off with emails or with phone or with messages and expecting the return right off the same day, right? Which is not actually happening anymore. So
Yeah, I love all this. We're getting some great questions coming in. I'm snickering because you're going to receive dozens of cold emails now from Clara. I think that was for Michael, who hasn't had any. And
I'm so sad all the time. No one is selling me nothing. It's like, why the hell I'm a management partner?
I'm lost. Do you have like a harder email to guess? Like, is it Michael spelt backwards or something? Like, I'm
no, it's just very often people are hitting like the main C-level titles. If it's C-level, it should be chief something, and if it's not chief, then well, you are not the guy that would make calls. So that's why back to what you guys have been doing, like really knowing your ICP and who the people are in different organizations. Because right now, if you're in marketing, advertising, or if you're in manufacturing, healthcare, in every size between 10 to 50 people, from 50 to 100, your role can be totally different. So hitting the CEO of the organization of 50 people in manufacturing is totally different by hitting the same CEO at the company of 100 or 200 people, because that might not be already your decision maker. You need to go one level or two level below that, right? So just really working with all of those variables at the same time, this is the only way. We cannot automate it. That's why you still need BDRs and SDRs, because you need to think, right? Instead of just do, it needs to also just think about what you're doing and why you're doing that. And I think that thinking these days is very difficult for people because of the information that we're getting from everywhere. So we're not, a lot of us are not just thinking about this, right? Yeah. So
my biggest hack, because people love hacks, when reaching out to a company, especially a bigger company, you know what? It doesn't even matter the size, especially a smaller company, was reach out to a lot of people that all could be the right contact. I sold e-commerce services. That's the VP of e-commerce. That's the director of e-commerce. It's also the VP of marketing, the director of marketing, things that sound like marketing,
yeah.
People that are connected to marketing, the CMO, the CEO. And I was able to get into a lot of big doors, so to speak, because of that. Like just limiting to, I bet we take it for granted. I bet people aren't reaching out to enough people in all ways, right? Like I bet they're like, I know it's the VP or whatever. I'm told only.
You know what I did? You know what I did, Jared? So I took two titles that are like head, VP, director, whatever. I reached out to them, they didn't answer. And I went up chain and say, listen, I just talked to or reached out to Jared and Nick, head and director. They didn't answer. They didn't answer because they whatever. Mike, help me out here. So I just point out the names, point out the people, I just referencing like, and then the subject is like, why Jared and Nick are not answering my emails. If I receive email like that, I would go ahead, open that email. If it's relevant, I would say, you know what? I appreciate you reaching out. You got my attention. Here's what we're gonna do next. So
I think probably on the other side as well is actually, you're often always thinking, I need to go to the top. I need to go to the top to make my way in. Sometimes start at the bottom, start right at the ground level. What are you struggling with? What is absolutely driving you up the wall from day to day? Then go to the top and say, I know what is going to solve a lot of your problems from below, if you've got obviously the solution to solve it. And I think often that's one that's really forgotten about, because they're the people that I say are on ground level that are experiencing those problems. So if you can help solve that, create some better efficiency, more outbound activity, whatever that may be, ultimately that's probably where you want to start as well.
Yeah, spot on. I got a question I empathize with here, because it's coming from a services agency. We all know outbound for services is just a little harder, right? Because it's harder to differentiate. Everybody does this, right? So
right.
Cold mailing for a software development agency. We've received mediocre ones, I'm sure of it. But we found all of our clients through cold mailing. But last year things changed, and they weren't able to generate that many leads. The open rate and click rates are still high. Messages are highly personalized, right amount of follow-ups, but 80% drop in responses. What do you think about this case study or this question?
Again, this is obviously this is very dependent on if you have, but ultimately it's almost creating for that person that reach out where perhaps they're missing out with some other work and other improvements you've made to somebody who perhaps is a competitor to theirs in the same field. You need to bring some relevance in terms of, and again, some accreditation to a degree in terms of what you're doing, and put your money where your mouth is in terms of this is, how we've helped out competitors of yours. You don't want to be the ones left behind. That would probably be my biggest, but I say that's very dependent on terms of who you've worked with and where.
I think that knowing and working with software development clients myself, I feel like very often in that specific industry, the difference in performance is also in the change of the market. Like sometimes the JavaScript is on the high, and there's people are hiring JavaScript developers. So when you're selling JavaScript developers, like you just buying as like a hot dogs. But sometimes when Python is on the high, so you cannot sell it because there are too many JavaScript developers. So in a way, you always also need to look at where the market is in terms of the actual like need of your solution. And if you don't want to be dependent on the market, then you need to expand your expertise in a different way, like being very niche, like a niche industry or like a niche sub industry. So you can be in healthcare, or you can be in biotech, AI based whatever in Germany, and work with government, right? And then you're probably going to have the same results, because it's not the market, it's the offering that is very exclusive. So I think that even in service, you can also work on expanding your offering, because usually people work on making more money, but rather than also developing the product or developing the service in a way that it's more granular, more kind of cut in stone, you know what I'm saying? So
And you could have outbound to this to understand, right? Because these are assumptions. You need to get to an answer. So one way, if you have opens, deliverability, everything the right, but the responses are not there, change your messaging, test it, right? Personalized, great. Maybe it's not being personalized the right way. Maybe it's not relevant, etc. If you're, and I just thought of this. This isn't something I do, but like if you're really that up a creek, reach out to everybody that's opened your email multiple times and be like, hey, I've seen you open it multiple times. I honestly need feedback. Do you not develop in this script that we offer, like as we're building our product? A, Um, are budgets dry, or is timing just off? And see if you can't get some feedback there to help you, and maybe even say, hey, like, it might not be a fit, but I need to learn, um, and go from that angle. So I think, so, what's cool about services is it is so hard, but everybody is doing the same mediocre outreach. So there's room to be creative, there, which is kind of exciting.
One of the insights maybe for folks that are currently have a software development shop but building their sales team right now and maybe tuning into this, because the nature of the business, I love sort of like talking businesses because I'm like passionate about building stuff and just generally, like the tech and startup and services. So what's happening, because usually software development shops are uh, development based, so they retention based, so most of their clients have been with them for years, so they don't usually grow by generating fast new clients, so they scale slowly, right? That's why you saw a lot of shops peak one for like 10 years old. So usually those folks, they are hiring and laying off people quickly in sales and marketing because they feel that the engineering is the main engine of the business and marketing and sales is just a support team that you can change. And because of that, their sales team is not learning and it's not an IP for them. So that's why every time the new sales and marketing people come in on board, they make very similar mistakes. That's why it's not scaling, not working. So try to treat your sales and marketing team as the main part of the growing engine of the business, not just the engineering. And then you will have people staying in for years and then optimizing and A/B testing, as just Jared mentioned, and learning from it. And then at some point, they will build the system where they can be adaptive quickly and they will be able to react on the shortings of their performance quicker. So to make the right decisions, it will take them less iterations, basically. And so this is just for that industry because I kind of have been on the both sides of it, so I can speak to that.
Is the ultimate hack just alignment of the whole team? Like, let's be real. Let's be really real here. Because so often
Align.
sales on a pedestal is put on an island, especially early. Nobody could tell me early with a team of under 20 that you're aligned halfway to perfect. You're hiring salespeople. Maybe you're better than most in giving them a goal, and you're saying hit it, and they're saying I need collateral, I need marketing. They're not saying what they need for marketing. I remember, like, I need marketing. um, maybe that's ad spend. Maybe that's something I need leads. Like, is that really what it all comes down to? Like, to become a bullet, or I'm sorry, like a missile?
Everything's got to be aligned. It's as simple as that. Anything from, like, simple as messaging, in terms of how are you portraying sales in the market, what are others and how are they speaking about the business on, like, things like social media. Is that message consistent? It's right down from the top. I think you'd be liar in sales. You're never going to sit there. Everybody always wants something extra to help them with the process, but it's 100%. It comes down to absolute pure alignment, right through from product through to, or the service you're offering, right through to marketing, sales, everything in between.
What do you think about this statement? Most sales orgs, most companies, I should say, not sales orgs, most companies don't understand fully the actual problem that they're solving.
Definitely. I
That's
think
because that's tough. It's tough to understand because neither the service provider or the solution provider nor the customer understands their problem, right? So usually you're just guessing kind of very often because there are so many people involved in the process. So for some, this is the problem. For some other, this is the problem. And not many organizations have the centralized goals for their company. Like, what is my goal for the next year? Like, what I'm doing, what I'm pursuing, and communicating that across the board. People are just sort of like having concept and they're trying to work with them, but not really, just kind of aligning with them. And to your point, Jared, about misalignment of the sales and marketing and success team in generally. And I feel like, and I didn't appreciate this role before, but when I started doing a chief revenue officer or sort of people that aligns all of those teams together and just kind of talks through, hey, this is what we all are doing because this and this and this that works for all of us, and then communicate and incorporating that learnings into the whole process. This is wow, this is like people starts actually knowing like, oh, this is what's happening and this is why we're doing that. Whereas you have head of marketing, head of sales, head of customer success, and all those folks have different their own goals to make marketing successful, to make sales successful, to make success successful, right? But not actually making the whole organization successful in a way.
I think actually the point you said in there probably perfectly brings it back around to what you said earlier as well, in terms of like, in terms of SaaS products, everybody always wanting more and more features to fit in with their thing. And I think ultimately a lot of it comes down to the customer themselves. Whatever is their pain point or their issue today, probably not the same one if in 3 months time, 4 months time, and that's where they're constantly trying to evolve without having to go out to market, get another product. Is there something that we can bring in and essentially leverage them to build? Because I don't think any business sits there with the same issue for even 12 months. It's constantly evolving.
It's super interesting because there's levels to it, right? Like it's you understanding the general problems that your product solves. It's you conveying that to somebody, assuming that they understand the problems that they actually have as well. I just want to bring that aspect in because their ego or knowledge or whatever might not put that to play together. So it needs to be the perfect storm. All we could do is try our best in doing what we can control.
Yeah, and that you also need to put some work into solution. So it's like very often right now what we want is like, well, I have this product, I want this product to work quickly, one click on the bottom, it should work, it should deliver the results. But that's not how it works, right? So like when a lot of people approach Folderly, like as an example, and they want, hey, well, I want to make sure that Folderly fixes my email spam, whatever, but they don't want to put work into their email marketing or email sequencing or their lists to make sure that their lists are clean, or into their technology or their product. So they're trying just to get a quick fix. But right now, when you really wanted a powerful solution or a powerful product, you need to know how to operate the product, how to work other things, working and integrating with that product, and how to integrate in that solution. That's why not many folks are appreciating the onboarding and integration. Again, I'm not like promoting that product, but a lot of folks that are in agency business, they don't have a customer relationship platform to help to work with customers, not with leads, not with deals like with HubSpot, but with customers. And we've integrated Plant Hat as our customer management platform, and the integration and onboarding process took us 5 months when we work every week with their representative going through integrating, and now it's a powerful solution. But it was instead of that part, we won't be able to solve our problem. So I think that really intact right now, having that integration period and alignment with all the stakeholders and teams is very important, not just the features or the effectiveness of the tool, right? Like having a folder or having other product in there not would be enough.
So I just get a note texted to me here that Outreach launched an AI email assistant today. We have more tools helping more people. I don't know if it's their version of Lavender or something. Could be. I need to read the full article, but this is a big deal, right? Like getting outbound right. Now, what KPIs are the most important for teams to look at in regards to managing outbound to be successful?
I think certainly from our side, and first and foremost, I think it's about FaceTime with your customers. You're not going to sell to every single customer, but it's about your brand's getting more and more known within the market, and that's something we really focus on. So in terms of what's most important to us, it's about how many demos are we completing, and we work everything else back from that. So that will then go back into very, very like individual metrics per individual for outbound. So how many dials does that take, how many LinkedIn messages, all the rest of it. But the first and foremost where it starts is what demos are they actually conducting, and getting that FaceTime with customers.
For me is quite recently for me, the deal scoring has been very important. It's like where you can generate X number of conversations, but what quality of those conversations are those? So we start scoring a lot, and we've realized that now you can see the quality of the conversation, of the appointment, uh, connected to a source of it. So then you can see at the scale, analyzing different channels and different approaches, where do you get the most meaningful and quality conversations from, and then how those conversations then are turning into paid customers, and then reverting back to what you're spending and then scaling that. Because we've last year we've been growing a lot, and we've been generating so many conversations, but the sales team wasn't closing enough, and we're like, okay, well, what's happening? Is the sales team is not doing good or whatever? And then we analyzed that there were so many not meaningful conversation being driven from some channels that we shouldn't be doing. So, and again, it's because we start measuring and doing the qualification on the business development end. So, which was a surprise to me, but it worked well. So
All this stuff that's like technologies, tools, all, I mean, what first off, what's the hardest thing for you all right now with Outbound?
Oh, that's a good question.
I you want to answer, Dick? Or
No,
go ahead.
go for it. I think.
So I think that for me is TAM. TAM is very, very challenging these days. The reason is that people feel like there are so many companies out there. There are so many businesses that you can drive change to, but there's not so many out there. So if you do and scale your business exponentially year over year, your TAM is not getting bigger. It's actually getting smaller. So finding the right conversations in an exaggerated market that you already been working with is tough. So I think that for us, it's more like a, you know, um, sometimes you feel like it's better to work with the TAM more smartly instead of generating 5, 10,000 leads and just going with the poor messaging. Instead, try to focus on really talking to 500 or 1,000 to 2,000 people and testing that messaging first without, like basically wasting your TAM. And by TAM, I mean total addressable market, right? So really like working with TAM and being smart about that for me personally is very important right now, and the challenge for my team. And also keeping the data structured. It's like, do you actually save data on all of your campaigns, on all of your conversions, on all of your leads, and actually putting them into one place, right? Like, because believe me, like in 3-4 years, you won't have information on anything that you've done on the past few years. So really keeping that in a structured manner is, I think, like I'm paying more for actually
Your
keeping
CRM?
structured. Right.
Should that data live in your CRM? Because right now it lives in a sales engagement platform, probably.
Yeah,
And
100%.
sales engagement platform, maybe. So then you lose that data probably. You save it to a Google Doc so you can make sure to transfer it to the new thing, but the actual data part of it, I'm sorry, the actual success metrics part of it, I do believe could be lost, which is ironically. Nick, what challenges are you having outside of my camera here?
No, I think the biggest challenge really, and this is, our product can service a lot of different areas and things like that. At the end of the day, we're a business that's, coming out of the startup phase more into the scale up, and it's actually how can we scale smartly. So it's around absolutely, fundamentally finding that core ICP in terms of ultimately helping you grow that ARR over time without experiencing obviously the churn that all companies will experience. It's really finding the core for that and where that absolutely services the point, to then I say scale way beyond that throughout the coming years. So that's probably the biggest challenge. As I say, it's just clearly identifying that need, and it probably goes back into that point we said earlier. That's one person's pain point today is probably not the same in 6 months time, and that's probably the biggest challenge that we'll be facing probably throughout this year, to be honest.
Jared,
Right.
what is your biggest challenge?
My biggest challenges are company-wide challenges right now. Running a community to increase engagement, launch in-person events this year, everybody. That's going to be great. And launch some new community initiatives. So, and then constantly aligning the team. I think alignment and listening, like challenges evolve and they change. We're gonna have 3 core things. There'll be our objectives and key results, right? Like that we're gonna go after. But I made a quote today that that's so true. Like ultimately, in business, we're not judged. We're judged on the outcomes we empower, not on what we know.
Yeah, that's true.
We're judged by the outcomes we empower. You have the smartest person that makes a company go under, and you could have a mediocre, smart person that just has a way to get the most out of their people. That person wins always, always. In closing, what excites you all the most about the future, though?
I suppose definitely like the speed of like the changing landscape. It moves so fast. Year to year, tech is advancing like there's no tomorrow. There's going to be a lot more things out there to help any team moving forward. But I think that's biggest excitement is just in terms of where are we right now? Where's that going to be in 3 years' time? So that's very much part of why we probably all enjoy the startup world and all that, because you don't know what's around the corner. That's probably the biggest thing for me, truth be told.
Right. So my turn, right? So it's what excites me. Obviously technology is changing fast, and I was under impression that, well, okay, we are already there. That's it. We already changed. Technology is so powerful. What's next? And now there is AI, right? That actually is surprisingly good, really good. And you're like, all right, what's next? So I feel like exciting is what comes in the next 10, 15 years with these breakouts that are happening that we maybe even don't know about in biotech, in AI, in pharma, in healthcare,
Oh yeah.
in maybe and consumer goods, whatever. Something that we in logistic transportation, and really kind of harnessing the power of that technology and just to build out what's next. What is the next phase of this of this world, of this civilization? Right, because I feel like 2030, 2040 going to be fast years for us.
So I'll look a little more myopically than that. That was really great. I personally think the future is creators and community, and I think on both of those, we've just started scratching the surface on how B2B leverages them to gain pipeline, to gain demand gen, to gain awareness. Whatever you're seeing out here, oh, there's too many people now. Oh, this is step one. And I think there'll be more finesse. Like it's not just going to be people saying like, "Hey, buy this or that." I think there's going to be more systems behind it, but creators, and then this creators and community. Sometimes they're one and the same. They're right there. And the second part, and I took this from the first VP of Facebook. I'm sorry, the VP of growth at Facebook. AI around emotion recommendations. Looking at all these data points, not just knowing geographically where you're at, and there's things there that's not even necessarily AI, but being able to predict when you're hungry, being able to whatever, and service up things like that as a technology to put on social networks, to layer on social networks. That's the obvious thing for like more ad revenue, but think about where else that could layer onto. It could layer onto a lot. It could layer onto Google. It could layer onto search.
But that's so scary, no, Jared? It's so scary being served. Yeah, it's being served directly like what you want, and you're gonna be always like just eating and eating without actually getting hungry for something. It's so scary.
No. If you actually, okay, we need to have a meta conversation offline, because that is one way to look at it. There's another way that it knows you, so it doesn't do that, or there's a weighting to your goals in that algorithm. But it's an exciting time. But I want to thank both of you for coming. today, Michael and Nick. I want to thank Selligence for being an awesome partner for this and so much more. Folderly as well for being an awesome partner as well. But this being hosted by Selligence. Nick, you want to give a quick plug on Selligence before we get out of here?
Yeah, well, might as well. But yeah, if you're looking to get rid of all your research and admin from any SDRs, any BDRs out there, I say help yourself become a bit more creative in your outreach, then yeah, hit me up.
Let's do this again, everybody. Thank you all for your time. This has been rad. There's some questions that have gone unanswered. Do you all have 2 minutes left? Can you go over a couple? One question I see here is, do you believe engagement between rep and prospects varies greatly based on the industry? Or is this a myth we tell ourselves? Ooh, I kind of like that. Yeah, just try to sell into the security space.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely does. I probably, in terms of that, can I give a really in-depth answer on that? Probably not. But yeah, everybody's got different interests. Everybody's got, their own knowledge base at, and let's be honest, that's why different people work in different organizations. They've got a deeper breadth of information behind them. So yeah, it 100% does, but that ultimately comes down to understanding again who it is that you're actually going into, understanding the market that they're dealing in, what's the problem that they're trying to solve. Then you can start to position, start to understand in terms of what your outreach needs to look like.
And just to add on this, Nick, and also approach and channel, right? So it's like sometimes you feel like, well, going after a certain industry with email or phone or social is not the right approach, because that industry is completely off with another world, right? So it probably needs some handshakes or some events or some other thing, right? So just really testing and see what works, but it would work, right? I personally think that whatever you are creating or selling or trying, it will eventually work. It always works. It's just try it and A/B test and figure out the best way, but it would work. And just believe in yourself, right? It's a weird, it's like television type phrase, but it's actually true, right? Just believe that and just go and do it. So
that's it. And we're joined by two leaders in Outbound. Their technologies are spectacular, whether it's deliverability or research. And so hyped to have you all and to learn from you and with you. Thank you for your time.
thank you, Jared.